What does one do in Ontario, Canada, after months of COVID lockdowns? Spring finally peeks through, and there's a slight relaxation in the lockdown rules. Well, how about a quick tour of some European cities? Without leaving Ontario, that is. Come along with us and see at aroundourtable.com.
Going up to John. Yes. And we're not going Doncaster.
We head out from our home in our campervan, Doranya, 2020 Coachmen Beyond, and head west and south into Southwestern Ontario. And our first stop along the way is just to see some friends from a distance before we turn along and go to our first stop in a European city in Southwestern Ontario. As we head west beyond the western end of Lake Ontario, we take the small roads. We avoid the highways as much as possible. We go through small villages, through quiet, yet to awaken spring farmland, and enjoy the comfort and the peace and the lack of immediacy to do anything but travel, enjoy ourselves, and relax. Well, we've made it to Europe, and we rented a van that looks surprisingly like our 2020 Coachmen Beyond. And we're about to enter our first European destination, which we will introduce you to shortly. Welcome to Paris. Well, this is a view of Paris that fewer tourists actually get. Of course, it's Paris, Ontario. And we're not in Europe. We're doing a little tour, and we're going to stop into some smaller communities and towns that have recognizable names for those who know European towns. Yeah, we're not traveling abroad yet, and we probably won't for the next year or two, depending on how things go. This is the closest we can get, but at least we get to enjoy our campervan a little bit, do some traveling, and get out of the house after almost a year of lockdowns, almost lockdowns, absolutely stay at home. Let's see how things go for the next couple of days. Railroad bridge. Well, it's not named directly after the city of Paris. It's actually named after plaster of Paris. Plaster of Paris itself is named after Paris, as the gypsum that was mined to make plaster of Paris in the past was mined from the hill of Montmartre in Paris. So plaster of Paris is named after Paris, and Paris, Ontario is named after plaster of Paris because there's gypsum found near Paris, Ontario. It's a pretty little town, but as everything you see in this video, pretty doesn't really show through a lot at this time of year. We're at the end of winter. Snow is mostly gone, but things are still fairly drab. And as we left our home, it was cold, it was cloudy, but we were on the road. In Paris, we stopped at the community center, a nice parking lot, and the plan was to walk around the town a little bit, explore. And we did some of that, but we didn't get very far. First of all, it was bitterly cold. And second, places are still closed, so we didn't get to enjoy any of the bars or restaurants in the town. And we didn't expect to. We're self-isolating through this whole thing. Riverside lunch in Paris. we have our delicious looking smoked salmon, goat cheese, and cucumber on 9-grain bread. I have my tea. Deanna has her
Coffee.
freshly made hot tea. Deanna has her earlier made cold coffee, and we're going to enjoy this. Paris, other than being known for its local gypsum production, is also known as the cobblestone capital of Canada. Structures are still standing that were made of cobblestones many years ago. There's about a dozen well-maintained houses, 2 churches, and various garden walls built from the river stones that were found in the Nith and Grand rivers that meet in the city of Paris. Our next stop wasn't on our original itinerary, but it was on the way. And we actually went to a country instead of a town. Welcome to Scotland. Scotland's claim to fame is it's the location known for the last battle between American and British troops on Canadian soil in 1812. As we drove towards our next destination, we noticed some derelict-looking sheds or huts at the side of the road, so we stopped to take a closer look. This area of Southern Ontario used to be tobacco country. I remember when I was in university not far from here, a lot of the locals used to work picking the tobacco, and these were the drying huts for the tobacco. Not happening too much anymore here, which is, in my mind, not a bad thing. Here we are in Delhi, Ontario. Not Delhi, Delhi. And obviously we're not in Europe, we're in India, but we have to pass through here too. And it's a rather large community. This used to be the center of the tobacco growing area, and there is a tobacco museum here. But we continued through because we were headed somewhere else in Europe. And here we are in Vienna. Vienna, Ontario, not quite as pretty as Vienna in Europe, which I have yet to visit. It's a small village just 5 kilometers north of Lake Erie. And it gets its name from the birthplace of the wife of one Samuel Edison. Edison's a fairly well-known name. Thomas Edison, Thomas Alva Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, was the grandson of Samuel Edison. So, after Vienna, what's the next logical place to travel to? Well, if you think in Europe, you'd be wrong. Because the next logical place to Vienna in Ontario is Copenhagen. The hamlet here was initially named Kunze's Corners from Charles Kunze, who was one of the first settlers. Kunze opened an inn called the Copenhagen Inn in around 1851, and when the post office arrived here in 1870, Kunze's Corners was no longer acceptable, I guess, so we have the name Copenhagen. But that's the end of our European tour for day one. And we head off for the night to the Falkland Islands. Just in time for dinner, we arrive in Port Stanley, Ontario. Port Stanley, a port on the shore of Lake Erie. Just to give a sense of where that might be to anybody who is familiar with the northern U.S. It's kind of halfway between Erie, Pennsylvania and Cleveland, Ohio, directly across the lake. This will be our first night boondocking in our camper van. We have owned the van now for close to 6 months, but we've been locked down for most of that time, and it's been winter. So this is going to be a fun time for us. And we'll exercise some of the components of the van in a way that we've never exercised them before. Particularly, can we keep ourselves warm and comfortable overnight using our propane heater, which uses an electric fan? Will our batteries last overnight? We'll see. Well, here we are, first evening boondocking. We're in a parking lot at the beach in Port Stanley, Ontario on Lake Erie. Not the most beautiful place, but at this time of year nothing is particularly beautiful because everything's melting and dirty. And what about you? Cheers, love.
Cheers.